The number one reason for bankruptcy in America is healthcare costs. It's so corrupt, it's killing people. If you think that big pharma or big insurance really care about you, you're wrong. They are literally profiteering off of death and disease. The only way we're really gonna fix this broken healthcare system is to find out what's really causing this chronic disease crisis.
On this week's podcast, I talked to my good friend, Brigham Buhler. You may have seen him on Rogan 3 times. He just went on Tucker Carlson's podcast, talked about pharmacy benefit managers. Brigham knows the ways of insurance companies, and he is out there exposing corruption in a huge way. We need to protect this man. He's also very knowledgeable on the history of pharmaceutical companies, the corruption in those, and the interplay between insurance and pharmaceutical companies, and really how this is making Americans very sick. It starts off in this podcast with a very dark message. There is a lot of corruption happening within these industries, but during the podcast, we also present tools to evade this corruption, to actually try and take back your healthcare at insurance and pharmaceutical levels, and give messages of hope in terms of food and interventions like stem cells, which are just on the horizon. Brigham is doing all sorts of great stuff now in Austin and broadly by creating cash pay services like Ways to Well, helping people get access to healthcare. He's an amazing human. Enjoy my podcast with Brigham Buhler. I'm very grateful he took the time to be on the podcast with me. Thanks for coming on the podcast, brother.
Dude, thank you for having me.
It's good to see you.
It's good to see
I
you.
have presents for you before we begin.
Let's go.
I got some lineage air-dried steak, meat sticks,
Heck yeah.
and pure American liver from Heart and Soil.
I love it.
And I know that you didn't have a whole lot of food before the podcast. So if you need to eat any of that during the podcast, just
I love
feel
it. Dude,
free.
I had these when you gave them to me last time. It's amazing. I love what you're doing.
I hope you guys at the clinic liked them.
Yeah, they've loved it. And I've told everyone about just the milk and honey, like raw milk and honey. When you made it for that dessert after you and I had steaks together, it was so good. It was ridiculous.
You want some?
You just carry it around?
I just carry it around.
That's hilarious. And this already has honey in it?
It has honey in it, yeah.
Oh my God, that's wild.
Do you want some?
I love it. Heck yeah.
All right, yeah, it's there for you whenever you
love
want.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
take it. All right, brother. So I want to start here. We're going to get serious right off the bat.
All right.
Deny, depose, defend.
Yeah.
The connections between insurance and pharmaceuticals are gnarly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. So I'm going to give you that prompt and we'll see where you go with that.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say those words, what do you think of?
I just think, well, in medicine, when we talk about uncovering the root cause, right, you don't treat the symptomology, you treat the root cause.
Right.
And part of this MAHA movement that you and I are both involved in is trying to uncover the root cause. Because the only way we're really going to fix this broken healthcare system is to find out what's really causing this chronic disease crisis.
Right.
And it runs so deep and so insidious that it's terrifying. And you've spoken, and Vonnie and, Callie have spoken implicitly about the involvement of big food and big industry and our food selections, our food choices, the FDA's involvement. But where this gets even more layered and more nuanced is as we begin to pivot towards the other safety net. So we have that aspect of food, lifestyle, diet, nutrition.
Right.
You and I both know 90% of chronic disease is preventable through diet and lifestyle. But we're ignoring that, and that section's captured. The next safety net historically was our primary cares and our frontline defenders against chronic disease were meant to be there to capture and prevent these chronic diseases from ever happening. But what happened is the insurance companies themselves began to monetize and profiteer off of chronic disease. And so I have to lay that groundwork to explain what he means by delay, deny, depose. Mm-hmm. What they're talking about when they say that is these insurance companies, there's a middleman, and I've gone over this on several podcasts, so I'm sorry for anyone who's heard it before.
We want to talk about the PBMs. We got to talk about
the PBMs. The pharmacy benefit managers were established in the 70s to negotiate the cost of prescription drug care, to drive down the cost, to help people like me and you, the average American, make our prescription medications more affordable. Mm-hmm. Because we know the average American today is so chronically ill because of our broken food systems that they're on 4 or more prescription drugs. 4 or more. And you look at that system and you go, why wouldn't we practice preventative? Like, why wouldn't we get proactive and predictive and prevent the chronic disease from ever occurring in the first place? And as you begin to understand how the system's been captured, the picture starts to make more sense. Mm-hmm. They don't prevent chronic disease because they're making money off of the chronic disease. I don't want to stop the cut from happening when when my job is to sell you Band-Aids. And my thing is, we shouldn't be selling Band-Aids. We should be stopping cuts. And if we look at how they're doing it, these pharmacy benefit managers that were established in the 70s to drive down the cost of our prescription drug care went out and got purchased by the big 5 insurance companies: United, Cigna, Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, CVS Caremark. Went in, swooped in the 80s and bought these entities. And at that point, it pivoted. And they went from driving down the cost of a drug to driving up the cost of a drug.
Which is wild.
And people say, well, that doesn't make sense. If they're paying for the drug, how are they benefiting by making it more expensive? And the answer is they never pay that price on the drug. They make it look like they pay that price on the drug. So they show you one price. And I like to say the margins are made in the mystery. When people say, I don't understand, why can't healthcare be more transparent? Or why can't I just understand what I'm paying for? Because they've made it that way. Because the more confused and disoriented we are, the harder it is for us to uncover what's really happening. And so let's go back to the patient on 4 or more drugs. Let's look at just a drug like metformin. They're making money off of the gap. So that's one area. So if you were to come into a pharmacy and, show me an insurance card and I swipe your card, it tells me what to charge you. And so I would have sold you metformin for a couple of dollars for your month's supply as a diabetes medication, but
without insurance.
But the insurance tells me to charge you $10 for your copay or deductible. And then you pay the $10. I don't get to keep that $8. That $8 gets clawed back to the PBM, which is nothing more than a holding company. So United Healthcare owns Optum. When you look at United Healthcare's profits or revenue last year, over $370 billion with a B, billion. How much of that was made at the PBM? 60%.
That's crazy.
60% of their revenue was made moving and fudging numbers and manipulating the numbers and price gouging us, the consumer, and us, the taxpayer, because most of the prescription drug care in this country is covered by your employer or Medicare, Medicaid. So it's either taxpayer dollars or employer dollars. They're never paying the dollars they tell you. So let's use like the GLP-1s, for example.
Ozempic.
Correct, because those are a big hot button item.
Right.
Why are they over $1,200 a month? This is crazy. Or insulin. There was an investigation. A Senate House committee launched an investigation into the cost of insulin, and what they found on average is 30% of the cost of prescription drug care was being used as profits at the pharmacy benefit manager. And so let's just do simple math and go, okay, well, if that truth carries over to GLP-1s, literally north of $300 a month could be being housed at the pharmacy benefit manager. That's just straight profits. Then at the end of a year, that insurance company goes to people like me who employ over 300 people, and they say, hey, Brigham, Joe Bob was on Ozempic, for a year. That was $1,000 a month. That cost us $12,000. We've got to hit you for that. And we've got to hit you with increased copays and deductibles. And we've got to recoup that money this year. We can't afford to cover $1,000 a month, but they never paid the $1,000 a month.
So the employer's premiums go up to cover their employees because the insurance companies are going to them saying, hey, look at how expensive this is. But they're really representing an inaccurate number. It's a fake number.
You nailed it.
It's a fake
number.
number.
They're setting the fake number. Then the government thinks they're getting a good deal on their Medicare, Medicaid prices. And so the states don't have as much power as the federal government to negotiate because they don't have the volumes. But what the state of Ohio found in their investigation was over just one state, okay? 32 forensic auditors looked into the pharmacy benefit managers, and they found $360 million in fraud and gap pricing in 1 year. One state. Put that across 50 states. Put that across all the employers in America. How bad are these insurance companies torching us? They are literally profiteering off of death and disease. Because where it goes deeper is now show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcomes. If you're incentivizing chronic disease because you're going to make money off the drugs And now the average American's on 4 or more prescription drugs. And my entire model's to sell you Band-Aids. I'm now in the market of creating cuts, not stopping cuts, because I want to sell you the Band-Aids. And so that is what they're doing. That's why delay, deny, depose. They're delaying your accessibility to surgeries, to procedures that could relieve your pain or fix this chronic issue. They then tell you, while you work through the process, here, we'll put you on an opioid. You know, they were implicit in the opioid crisis. That's where this gets dark too. I talked about this on Tucker. They just released an article where they found there were hundreds of millions of dollars made by the pharmacy benefit managers in what we would call kickbacks off of opioids. And they skated through that whole opioid crisis as an unknowing middleman profiteering off death and destruction.
Wow. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. It's millions of lives affected negatively. Just so people understand the reference. And of course, I started the podcast off with the wrong 3 words, but deny, delay, depose were inscribed on the bullet casings in the assassination of the United CEO, the United Healthcare CEO. And this is an interesting thing because what was the guy's name? Luigi. He's been indicted or he's in jail for this. And look, I've heard you talk about this on previous podcasts. We're not saying in any way, shape, or form that this should have been this assassination murder should have happened. But I think that it gives us a story into the guy behind it all. And you see, and again, I'm not condoning this. I'm saying this was a guy who apparently had multiple fusions in his back, probably became addicted to opioids, had his insurance claims denied, delayed, right? Yep. And so this is an upwelling of frustration. If we look at
like that, you're spot on. And like, it is. What happened is tragic. And I said that nobody's condoning that.
Yeah.
But we also have to say the 1.7 million Americans that are dying a year of chronic disease is also tragic. More than every war we've ever fought combined. In every war America's fought, we've lost around 1.2 million American lives. It's tragic and it's terrible. But every year we're losing 1.7 million people to chronic diseases that are preventable if our FDA did not let us down and they truly protected the American people and did not let themselves get bought and corrupted by big pharma, by big insurance, and by big food.
It's like an evil trinity, you know? And it's interesting because I've thought mostly about food. But when I started listening to you on podcasts, my jaw was on the floor, man. I was thinking, wow, like I'm a doctor. I worked in the system, but I didn't see it, you know, because I was just a pawn in the system. I've kind of left the system now. I don't see patients anymore. I do educational stuff and I work on other projects like this Make America Healthy Again movement and stuff. But the food system is broken, as you said, and I've talked about that on tons of podcasts. But like you said, once people get unwell because of the food system, the healthcare system, which is connected with pharma, and the insurance system should be there to protect us, should be there.
Yes.
And so it's insane how badly this is all broken.
Yes.
And the idea that, I mean, when did insurance companies begin? I've heard you, like, what's the history of insurance companies?
I think it was the 30s at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas Medical Center began to say, hey, there's a lot of options out there. Let's build a payment plan where people could pay monthly and build a nest egg for when they need these crucial treatments or surgeries or medications. And what happened is essentially I think it was the 70s, HMOs came out. And then within a matter of time, HMOs became a for-profit juggernaut where the goal pivoted from, you know, how many patient lives can we manage? How many patient lives can we capture? Because by capturing more patient lives, you can perpetuate the Ponzi scheme and you can control the flow of patient lives to hospital systems. And so then they go in and negotiate with hospital systems and it allows them to, they decide who gets surgery, when you get surgery, who does the surgery, what hospitals you're allowed to go to. They create steps and obstructions every step along the way. So when we say delay, what do you mean by delay? The average person has to wait 2 or more months right now to get in with a primary care in America because there's a primary care shortage. And so you're waiting to get in. Let's say I injure my back. Let's just use Luigi as an example. I injure my back. I got to go to a primary care first because I'm not allowed to go to a specialist, right? My insurance is going to dictate first go to a primary. Primary is going to do a basic workup and go, hey, I don't treat back injuries, I need to refer you out to a specialist. You're then going to get referred out to probably a spine or an orthopedic structural doctor. That doctor may take 2 to 3 months to get in with. Okay. Then you get in with that doctor. They say, I really can't tell you what's going on without an MRI. I need to get the insurance approval on an MRI, right? Now you've got to fight with the insurance oftentimes to get the approval to get the MRI. United Healthcare a year ago had a 37% denial rate. When they try to say that it's 30% on average, United's was 37%. We're getting almost to half, okay? And what we found in the investigations into this CEO was that only 10% of the denials were justified.
At United.
They did that means 90% into United Healthcare.
Yeah.
90%, and this is where this gets messed up.
Yeah.
The Department of Justice was investigating United Healthcare for their tactics. And this CEO knew that they were going to get nailed to the wall for what they were doing. And he unloaded his stock during the middle of all of this because he knew once the announcement came out that there was a Department of Justice investigation into United Healthcare, the stock price would tank. So he insider traded and unloaded his stock. That stock crash plummeted the values of teacher retirement plans in California, firefighter retirement plans in California. Not only are you killing people in one half of your business, your actions as an individual cost the retirement plans and the pension plans of hardworking Americans throughout the country. Damage these people's retirement, irreversibly. Yeah. It's terrible. And that's just the game United Healthcare plays. And so where I'm going with this, they deny those claims. We find out 90% of those claims never should have been denied. United Healthcare says, whoops, sorry guys, we were using a new AI algorithm and it accidentally denied those claims. It shouldn't have. It was a glitch. Well, it was a glitch that made you millions and millions of dollars. They've almost doubled their stock price over the last 5 years. So this corruption is allowing them to print billions and billions of dollars to drive up their valuation, all the while their patients are getting denied the care they worked so hard and paid for.
It's just, I don't get it. Like, I just want to try and unravel this, It's like, okay, 1930s, 1970s, the HMOs come in. My dad is an internist, right? I grew up with a father who worked so much, right? Yeah. He worked at GW and then he had a private practice. I never saw my father much growing up. He would get home after I'd gone to sleep. He worked until 1 or 2 in the morning. I would get up in the middle of the night. I would wake up and I would see him downstairs at 2 in the morning on the living room floor with a stack of charts, charting. And then he would get up and go back to work. And his life as a internal medicine doctor doing private practice, billing insurances, was miserable. It was very, very hard for him. Then he eventually started working for managed care and HMO, and things got worse. And it's just, I've seen this firsthand in my father and then in my work as a doctor. And it's just, let's just back up. Do you think it's just because healthcare has become so expensive? Has healthcare become overly technologized? You were a pharmaceutical rep. You were a hardware rep for surgeries. Yeah. Are there just ballooning costs for healthcare that we need insurance companies? Or actually, wasn't there something in Obamacare where you got penalized if you didn't have insurance? Yeah. You can't even opt out of the system.
So even that's a wild story. The main woman who helped drive home Obamacare and get the deal done put in all sorts of beneficial verbiage to the pharmacy benefit managers and to the big insurance companies. Drove that Obamacare program home, forcing you by law to have to go pay these people for insurance that really the plans aren't covering anything. Oftentimes your out-of-pocket copay and deductible are so much with some of these shittier plans, if I'm just calling them what they are, that the average person's terrified to go to the doctor because they don't want to pay the big out-of-pocket copay or deductible. And if we look at surgeries, sometimes, like if I have a 20-year-old kid working at my pharmacy, for instance, they're going to take the cheapest plan, right? 9 out of 10 times, because they say I'm young, I'm healthy, I work out, I don't really use my insurance, I'm going to risk it. I don't want to pay a huge out-of-pocket monthly expense. So I'll risk a bigger copay or deductible. Okay. Well, the problem with that is now, let's say you tear your ACL Your copay on that is going to be probably $10,000+. The insurance company's arrangement with the hospitals left holding that bag of shit, not the insurance company. They've outsourced the risk of a subprime mortgage to the hospital and the clinicians, the doctor's offices, the MRI centers, the genetic labs, and they've put in the fine print of the contract, you, the facility, have to go collect this copay or deductible, or we, the big insurance company, could deny the claim and not pay it. Okay, by law, you have to make a reasonable effort to collect. The number one reason for bankruptcy in America is healthcare costs. Wow. For individuals. The number one reason for bankruptcy for families is that they get in a situation where they can't afford to pay that bill. And then you're forced as a hospital to go after them, or United could sue you or not pay you. And I explained this on, I think it was Tucker. If we really look at it, it's a lie agreed upon. Hospitals may have millions in AR due to them from these big insurance companies.
AR?
Accounts receivable.
Oh, right. Okay.
So money owed to them. They did ACL surgery on 1,000 different people. They're owed $10 million. Now, they have to show a reasonable effort to collect copays and deductibles and chase these people down for that $10,000. If they don't, United, if they get into a litigation situation, right, depose, that was the other word. If you are forced to depose because United will come in and say, we're going to give you 30% of what you billed us. You can either fight them in the court of law or take the short payment. And these hospitals are terrified to fight them because if they fight them, United's going to say, we want to see your bookkeeping. And then United's going to say, well, look, it looks like you only collected 50% of your copays. We think that we have grounds to question all of your contracts and all of the money we owe you, right? And so everyone is captured and stuck in this corrupt, broken system. The patient's getting screwed. The hospitals are getting screwed. Meanwhile, the insurance company is literally the insurance industry is doing about $1.6 trillion a year in revenue. What? 1.6 trillion. It is bigger than all of the pharmaceutical companies combined in revenue. Wow. And so this is a juggernaut industry, and it is being run by the mob, by like literally the healthcare mob. And again, they control every lever, every reimbursement, every direction, where your patients go, how they get reimbursed, what their copay is, what their deductible is, what your out-of-pocket expense is, what you have to do as a hospital or a surgery center or medical practice. You know, it's insane.
So insurance is really, it sounds like to me that pharmacy, big pharma, and insurance are in bed together. But big insurance companies are really the big brother kind of looking over and saying, you have to do it this way, or we're not going to pay you, or we're going to take you to court. And they have nearly unlimited funds to litigate with you.
They all have a role to play. Like when we talk about, you asked earlier about the cost of, how are we, is it because we're spending so much, right? And so let's look at let's talk about a drug let's walk through one drug and show you how throughout the system this would play. Okay. Let's look at GLP-1s again.
Yeah.
Who created the GLP-1s? The GLP-1s were actually innovated and created by the NIH, the National Institute for Health.
In the United States.
Most drugs, early innovation comes from the NIH. Who funds the NIH? Pharma. Most of it is funded by, a big chunk pharma, but a big chunk by taxpayer dollars.
Okay.
And so it's a mixture of taxpayer dollars and pharma incentives. Once a molecule reaches a point that it shows promise, then big pharma picks it out of the pool. But all of the losses, the duds, we pay for. We, the American taxpayer, pay for through tax incentives and programs that say, oh, this drug didn't work. Okay, the taxpayers will fit the bill on that through, like a tax rebate to the big pharmaceutical companies. Now you get a drug that looks promising. the big pharmaceutical companies then just give basically a royalty deal to the NIH, take that molecule, bring it to market, run it through their, placebo-controlled trials, ink the deal with the FDA, ramrod it into the marketplace. And now again, we, the taxpayers, are fitting the bill for these blockbuster drugs that were such an innovation. But Big Pharma didn't really ever take that risk. We did. You get what I'm saying? We're paying for the drug over and over and over again. We're paying for the innovation. Then the drug reaches the market. Then we have to pay a premium for the innovative drug that we already helped build. Now the insurance companies come in and go, that's not coming into the marketplace without our cut. If you want me to put that drug on formulary, we want 30%. On average, this is the Senate saying this, not me. The Senate Finance Committee uncovered 30% of prescription drug care is typically going back to the PBMs, which is nothing more than the big insurance companies. And so throughout the system, we're just paying and paying and paying and paying. The insurance companies aren't paying. The lie they tell the American people is we're charging these premiums because our cost of business is going up. Your cost of business is going up because you're artificially inflating it at your holding companies.
It's just a shell game.
Yes,
it's just a shell game. It's just wild. So how did Novo Nordisk get a hold of Ozempic?
All they do is they negotiate. Well, and it depends on which country, who innovated where. But I can tell you with one of the GLP-1 molecules, and it may be it's either tirzepatide or semaglutide. I can't remember. And those are the drug names, which is the GLP-1 weight loss drugs. That was invented at the NIH. There was a study done because they realized Gila monsters didn't seem to be hungry or eating that often. And they were curious, are they hungry? And they uncovered somehow they're not hungry. And then they realized they have this higher level of a GLP-1 agonist in their system. And so that's how they created this market space and began to research it. And then once the product got to a point where it looked promising, and this is every drug, by the way, almost every drug on the market starts at the NIH. It's the incubator. And if it fails, we, the people, pay for that. If it hits, Big Pharma signs a royalty agreement and then takes it to market and then works with the FDA to bring it to market. But then we know about how they're colluding with the FDA and oftentimes pushing drugs into the marketplace that maybe aren't efficacious or maybe don't have the best side effect profile. But their job isn't to provide us with safe, efficacious drugs. Their job in their mind is to hit that quarterly earning, that quarterly profit for Wall Street. And so often they're trading patient lives for quarterly profits.
It's just, it blows my mind. And there's a ray of hope, right? So you and I will soon be in a room with the new head of the NIH and the new head of the FDA. Like, we are going to get to hang out with Jay Bhattacharya and Marty Makary.
Yes.
Hopefully they get confirmed,
Yeah. I know.
This whole thing.
We need it.
We need it. Like, it's just the fact that, RFK, I'm praying that he gets confirmed and all people get confirmed. But can you imagine how different the landscape may look in 2 or 3 years?
It could be a game changer.
If Jay Bhattacharya is the head of the NIH and Marty Makary is the head of the FDA, because we talked a little bit about the NIH, the National Institutes of Health. I grew up in Northern Virginia. I went there as a kid. I did a science fair in like the 8th or 9th grade, and I won a big prize. And they sent me over to the NIH. Awesome. Yeah, they sent me over to the NIH to learn to pipette. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. It was kind of a joke. Funny. He was like, take it up like this and you put it in the well. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm like moving plasmids around little wells. I had no idea what kind of science I was doing. But it's a big building. It's a big deal there. And listening to what you're saying and listening to what RFK Jr. has been talking about on podcasts, on Sean Ryan's podcast, about potential corruption at the level of the NIH. Are they not allowed to do the studies they want to do? Why hasn't high fructose corn syrup been researched? Why don't we have more research on seed oils? Who's paying for this stuff? If the taxpayers are paying, how do we get to decide why is so much research on pharma? Yeah. I want to see studies on food. That's my bias, right?
Because there's no money. That's what I'm saying. You're right. I know. The money is made in candidly, like what Callie says is the most profitable thing in the world is a sick child. And the truth of the matter is, I'm not going to go so far to say they're intentionally building a system to make us chronically ill. What I'm going to say...
Sure looks like it to me, bro.
It does. It does. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it might be a duck.
It might be.
But what I can tell you that is undeniable, I can't assume intent. But what I can do is walk you through methodically how it would appear optically that there is a big advantage to the financial returns on sick care versus health care. And if we really look at who owns the big 5 insurance companies, it comes down to the same puppets every time. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street.
So
pull
sinister.
back that mask.
So
now,
sinister.
Then we go to who owns big food. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. Then we go to who owns big pharma. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. Then we go to who owns BlackRock and Vanguard, State Street. And like it all starts to get to a point where it's almost just one giant conglomerate that looks like options, but there's not really options.
So who owns BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street? I don't think they really tell who their shareholders
are. and their majority shareholders, if you look at the majority shareholder of State Street, it's BlackRock and Vanguard. And if you look at the majority shareholders of BlackRock, it's Vanguard and State Street. Right? So they're all really almost one big company. And then they try to say, well, it's a culmination of investors and da-da-da. You know, we're only a percentage of that. Like we, the free people investing in those entities, are only a percentage of that. So there are big power families or somebody behind the machine and the lobbying power of these entities. Because even when you start looking at the news outlets, like when we look at what happened with COVID and people go, how did we let these news outlets, like they didn't seem to want to tell the truth. They didn't want to seem to challenge these narratives, or they wouldn't even acknowledge these narratives that have turned out to be true. They shut it down. But who owns those entities? If it doesn't matter whether we're looking at Fox, MSNBC, all BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, BlackRock, Vanguard, it all throughout. There are touch points and levers and things that can be pulled. And I'm not trying to be conspiratorial, but what I'm asking people to do is take your blinders off and take your health into your own. You are the only one that truly is going to drive yours and your family's health. You have got to take sovereignty and accountability. If you think for a second that big pharma or big insurance really care about you, you're wrong. And your clinician does. Your doctors, like you said, I watched it, Paul. I watched doctors like your dad who cared, work their asses off, run into the ground because of the reimbursement rates. They've got to see 40 people in a day. On average, a primary care has 6.5 minutes with a patient. You cannot dive into diet, lifestyle, nutrition. They're not even trained on it either.
We're not taught.
Yeah.
I said this at AmFest. You know, doctors are not taught these things. I had 0 courses in nutrition. I learned about the Krebs cycle. You learn about celiac disease, and that's where it stops.
Yeah.
You're not taught about seed oils or, anything. You're not taught about food dyes. You're not taught about satiety.
And you'll even see the opposite. Look at how much they've tried to ostracize people like you for ringing the bell on food is health. Food is medicine. It is. It's because it is. Even the booms in compounding and like the businesses I'm in, if you really peel back the layers to that onion and go, why are so many people taking peptides? Peptides are just short chain amino acids. Why are people needing these short chain amino acids? Because our bodies, as we age, become less efficient in processing these amino acids, but also our diet, lifestyle, nutrition is deficient in these amino acids. And even if you're doing your best to pick the right ingredients, to make sure you're eating healthy sourced foods, you know, a carrot today still has like, I think it's 1/8 of the nutritional value of a carrot of the 80s.
I've always wondered about that. Yeah.
It's stripped soils. It's our farming. It's everything.
Yeah. It's mostly these ultra processed foods. And hanging out with Callie and Vonnie, I've been thinking about this a lot more, that, you know, I think a lot about seed oils and I think a lot about, you know, basically garbage foods like that. But then it's like, oh, wow, food dyes. And this idea of these generally recognized as safe standards at the level of the FDA that are just all grandfathered in. It's like, wow, there are so many chemicals in our food. Every time I see natural flavors on a food now, I think, I don't know what that is.
I'm sure you've gone into this. Think about generally recognized as safe. Okay, let's just use red dye, which they just
banned.
I know.
What, red dye 3?
Yeah, and think about it though. Let's take any of these. Let's take any food dye color. Okay, you're only required to show, if I make Fruit Loops, I'm only required to show that based off my label at that dosage, it's safe. But what I am not required to show is if a kid eats 5 times, no, a kid doesn't eat the little cup that they say you're eating. They pour a big bowl of Lucky Charms. I
had the biggest bowl when I was a kid,
and they eat that, but that's one meal. Now they go and they drink Big Red, and then they go, and I'm not saying any of this stuff is healthy. It's all bad. But I also see the average Americans just trying to survive. They're hardworking people trying to make it through the day. we've got to help people help themselves. I do agree with a lot of the naysayers. Like, people have got to take accountability for their diet and their lifestyle, but we also can help. Does it not hurt to put checks and balances in place where we're not putting poison in food?
Just want to pause the podcast for 1 minute to tell you guys about Pure American Liver from Heart and Soil. I'm super proud of this, guys. As you hear in this podcast, I believe liver is an incredibly nutritious food for humans because of the nutrients in liver, but also because of the microRNAs in liver, which are probably helpful for us at so many levels in terms of regenerating tissues. We talk about stem cells in this podcast with Brigham, but I think some of the shared mechanisms are around microRNAs, and freeze drying preserves microRNAs. You guys have probably tried liver, but if you haven't tried this one, you need to give it a shot. You can find Pure American Liver at heartandsoil.co. This is our grass-fed, grass-finished, regeneratively raised liver in the United States, and it is one of the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. When you take this, you feel it. You get an energy boost. Trust me on this, guys. Check us out, heartandsoil.co. Back to the podcast. So I had an interesting conversation with Justin Mayers while I was here in Austin, because we're going to see Courtney Swan while we're in DC. And Courtney and I were talking about this because Courtney trained as a registered dietitian and I trained as a doctor. And so as a doctor in my training, I know that I got no nutrition and I got mostly told about pharmaceutical drugs. Here's a decision tree. You diagnose the patient and then you give them a drug, right? That's what I learned to do. According to Courtney, basically dietitians are taught what kind of food, but all of their sort of teaching outlines, all of their rubrics are based, they're influenced by big food. And so you go to these dietitian conferences, it's Coca-Cola, it's Nestle, it's Kraft. It's just, medicine is captured by pharma and dietetics is captured by big food. It's just crazy. And so when she posts about it, people in dietetics community come back at her and say, what about food deserts? It is elitist. It is racist, quote unquote, Courtney, to say that you need to eat these healthy foods because some people don't have access to them.
And you know what's crazy though, is that's the playbook that Callie Means
Exactly.
was involved in, and he blew the whistle on that.
Yes.
They lobbied the NAACP to pressure Congress to allow food stamps to cover Coca-Cola, knowing that diabetes disproportionately impacts poverty-stricken and minority communities, which then leads to a chronic disease crisis, which then leads and perpetuates to a drug crisis, which then leads to a healthcare crisis, which then leads to a bankruptcy crisis. All of it is self-fulfilling prophecy. And when I testified in front of the Senate at that Maha Senate hearing, my main message to the Senate, or to the Senate, was, if we allow the corporate capture of our institutions front to back, which we have, then we have to expect everything will have an agenda. There is a hidden agenda to everything they're doing, from our food system to our healthcare system to our insurance system to everything has been captured. And we can't trust the data. And look at just people asking about the food dyes, what has happened and how quick we had some reform. And I know the naysayers are going, well, that's not going to change anything. It's a step in the right direction. Can we not celebrate a win?
100%.
And we've got to keep pushing for across the board for all these different aspects. But a win's a win. Like, getting poison out of our food is definitely a step in the right direction.
One step at a time.
Yeah.
And when it comes to these food deserts, Justin was telling me, and he sent me an article, that like these are food deserts. They're based on consumer choice. And it goes back to what you were saying about, like, we probably need to regulate this from a top-down perspective. A lot of the supermarkets in these poor, rural, poverty-stricken areas used to have vegetables, and nobody bought them. Because if you have vegetables and you have addictive Coca-Cola and candy bars, and they're the same price, nobody is looking at the micronutrients going, oh, I should eat that tomato or that orange. You know, they're going, I'm going to eat this junk food, which in my mind is illegal drugs. This is illegal drugs. And look, I guess we have sovereignty in the United States and we have we have rights, but like, this is legal drugs. And when our food deserts are a result of consumer choice, we have a big problem on our hands. But it's crazy to me. That gets leveraged against us at every angle. The dietitians will come back, often paid by big food. This has come out before. These dietitians have been paid to talk about, oh, you can eat a little bit of junk food, all this kind of stuff. And they'll come back and criticize us, saying that's racist, that's classist, that's elitist. There are food deserts. Those food deserts are there because people don't want to be healthy. I think
I posted this on Instagram the other day. It was a study that found that 90% of the drug-related studies had some sort of conflict of interest. And it's like, 90%. And it's probably even worse in food. I don't know. I'm sure you probably know those statistics. I guarantee you it's
the USDA
terrible.
is similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. The USDA has captured 19 out of 20 people. Nina Teicholz did this study. 19 out of 20 people on the USDA guidelines committee had ties to pharma and big food. 95% of people on the USDA committee. So this is crazy. And like I said, I'm praying that RFK Jr. gets confirmed and that we get a new USDA guidelines committee.
Yep.
And that Marty Makary and the FDA, Jay Bhattacharya and the NIH. I mean, things could look very, very different.
Absolutely.
Could pharmaceutical companies exist without pharmacy benefit managers? Because look, pharmaceutical companies make pharmaceuticals, they make drugs. These do have some benefits for humans. I know you agree with this.
Yes.
Could we just get rid of
The answer is
PBMs?
absolutely.
Like-
and that's actually what the state of Ohio did. The state of Ohio fired the pharmacy benefit managers, said, we'll negotiate our own cost of prescription drug care.
Right.
And they saved $360 million in the first year alone. I mean, it's an insane amount of money, and that across the nation. And the PBMs have been captured, and they are not helping the American people. They're not driving down the cost of prescription drug care. They're an unnecessary middleman negotiating up the price of care and lining their pocketbooks all the way to the bank. And that is a chronic issue and a crux of the problem, because they decide which prescription drugs get on formularies. And the reason this is so important, having owned a retail pharmacy, when these grandmas come to the counter and they have to fill 4 or more prescription drugs and they're part of a Medicare plan, this is what people don't understand. It cuts so much deeper, because a lot of times on these insurance plans, these governmental insurance plans, these individuals have what's called a donut. So the insurance plan will say, we'll cover the first $10,000 in prescription drugs. After that, Meemaw is on the hook for the next $5,000, and then we'll kick in $10,000 after that. Right? So if they lie about the cost of the drug and Meemaw's on 4 drugs and they make it $1,000 a month for her drugs, in 10 months, she's burned through all of her care. Now she has to come out of pocket, but she can't afford that. So she has to choose, does she get to buy food that month, or does she continue her blood pressure medicine? It's so corrupt. It's killing people. It is killing people. And it's making it so hard for the average American to afford healthcare. And it's that these are problems that could be solved. They could definitely be solved.
And I feel like they're not being solved because of the status quo, because
100%.
of lobbyists at the level of Congress. It's just, when I think of the swamp, this is what I think of in DC. And I grew up in DC. I've never been a part of that world. I've always just been interested in, medicine and human biology and molecular, basis of human disease. But there's a swamp there, man.
It's bad.
It's crazy.
But I will tell you, the message, the Maha message, like no matter how you stand on this, I've never been political. I'm not Republican. I'm not Democrat.
Right.
I'm team humanity, right? And I'm team anti-corruption. That's all I'm trying to say. And I will say, I'm meeting with Bobby Kennedy, meeting with Tulsi Gabbard. They are allies and advocates for this movement. And it's resonating. You know how I know it's resonating is I did a call yesterday with Buddy Johnson, who's a congressman out of Georgia. And he was so fired up. He's a former pharmacist who owned small retail pharmacies throughout the state of Georgia, and his pharmacies were put out of business. And he said, Brigham, I sat there and had to watch crying mothers who had to decide, do I buy food this month or do I buy my kids prescription drugs that keep them alive? These aren't decisions that parents should have to make. The system shouldn't be that broken. That is a level of disgust that is just vulgar. To think that you're making $370 billion in revenue while people are dying in the streets off of your choices and your ability to block their care, block their ability to cancer treatments, block their ability to cures. And you're just sitting there peddling drugs to them because that's how you're really making your money and your profits. It's scary. It's sad.
It's so sad. And so, yeah, I'm so glad that you're a part of this, because I think that the calls that you're making, man, are hugely beneficial for us and are going to be a part of this huge change. I mean, I'm so excited you're going to be there this weekend.
Yeah.
Like, this is a big deal, man. Like, we have the opportunity to change these things. Let's talk about some of the hopeful sides of these.
Yeah,
Let's talk about the other
sure.
side, bro. I mean, I think most people listening to this understand pharmaceutical drugs have a place. They all have side effects. There's a lot of corruption. Maybe we'll circle back to pharmaceutical drugs later in the podcast. I love that we got to talk a little bit about the insurance companies, and I want people to understand how corrupt those are. I want people to understand how inflated the prices of drugs were through the pharmacy benefit managers. I don't know what advice I would give to people. Maybe
my advice to people is we have to get proactive and predictive. You cannot think that you can just wait on your insurance company and that they're going to help guide you. If you follow the average insurance, if you go to the average American doctor, you eat the average American diet, you will die of the average American chronic disease. And we can prevent those diseases, but it starts with getting proactive and predictive. And in order to do that, it starts with you taking a look under the hood. I tell people, you've got to think of health insurance like car insurance. It is not health insurance anymore. It's not even called health insurance. It's called managed care. Most of these policies, if you look at it, it's managed care. They are managing your chronic disease and they are maximizing their profits. Your job, if it's me, I'm taking sovereignty and accountability over my health and my family's health.
Love that.
And I'm going to do the deep dive. Find a clinic in your area, a cash pay primary care that is not in that ecosystem. And it would blow your mind what you can do with just a basic lipid panel that dives deeper, that looks at over 70 biomarkers. At my company, Ways to Well, we combine that with a DEXA and a VO2 max. Okay, if I have your DEXA, your VO2 max, the DEXA, I know you're familiar with it as a clinician, but for the listeners, I'll say it's a scan of your body that is traditionally been used to assess bone mineral density and bone health. But the beauty of it is it also tells us how much lean muscle mass you have, how much visceral fat you have, how much subcutaneous fat you have, and your bone mineral density. Why is that important? One of the greatest risk factors as we age to all-cause mortality is a fracture. We know your bone health and we know the average deterioration of bone health, and we can begin to model it out and prevent and slow the decline of your bone mineral density. We know your lean muscle mass. We know one of the crucial markers to driving longevity is the maintaining of lean muscle mass as we age. We can help do that now with a strategy. What you said, diet, lifestyle, nutrition. If I know that Paul Saladino's walking around with 145 pounds of lean muscle mass, I know that I need to eat a minimal, probably a gram of protein per pound of lean muscle mass just to maintain lean muscle mass as I age. I can now develop a strategy to help you through food. Food is the medicine, and we don't need all these prescription drugs. Then lastly, your VO2 max tells me your heart health and your overall respiratory health. And so if I can combine those three and load it into like our AI algorithm, I can begin to project out your all-cause mortality risk and help drive that down. Gamify it, make it fun. Let's help people drive health span. Because the number one indicator, the difference between somebody who lives to be a centenarian and somebody who dies at the average American life expectancy, the number one thing they've uncovered is it's the onset of chronic disease. So it comes down to,
which is preventable.
Can we prevent the onset?
And it's reversible.
Yes. And it's going to come down to getting proactive and predictive. Don't blindly put yourself in the hands of these insurance companies, because if you do, they're going to monetize you. They're going to profiteer off you.
You're in the matrix.
And you're plugged in. And you can take yourself out. And it's not exorbitant. And I know everybody can't afford it. But gosh, man, if you could even afford to have a comprehensive blood panel and do a basic workup once a year, it's probably going to cost you $500-$600.
That's it.
And you could have all the knowledge right there at your fingertips to really drive change.
What do you think about this strategy? So I don't even live in the United States most of the time, so I don't even have health insurance.
I know you're out of the matrix.
I'm trying in every way. I feel like if I were going to live in the United States, I would have catastrophic health insurance, right? Yep. A big deductible, $5,000, $10,000. If I am in a car accident, my car insurance might cover it. But, say I'm hitting the punching bag and I tear an ACL. I'm kicking and I do something in my wrist, whatever. Mm-hmm. When I'm surfing or skiing, I tear a ligament in my knee. I need catastrophic health insurance for that. And that's, who knows what that costs someone, maybe $100 a month. Maybe I'm just ballparking it. You can tell me if I'm way off. But then I think the rest of the money my strategy, I would put that in an HSA, right? A pre-tax money.
I love where your head's at.
Yeah, I would put all that money in an HSA. And we're lazy as humans. We would rather spend that money on Chick-fil-A, or junk food or a better cell phone but I think that I want the listeners of the podcast to realize, like, you have to put aside money in your HSA.
Yep.
And that money, it's pre-tax, right? So that comes out before you get taxed. The federal government doesn't get a hold of that. If you can put a few $1,000s in an HSA every year, you can go to a cash pay clinic, and there you're actually getting your money's worth. You're wasting your money.
I've said to Bobby, like, what would be amazing is if they increase the dollar amounts of HSAs to allow patients to store money away like acorns to protect themselves, to be able to get care.
Why is it
true
capped?
health care, not sick care?
Why is it capped?
I know.
I don't
and
understand.
it should be covering diet, lifestyle, nutrition, nutritionist calls, physical therapy, red light, sauna, ice bath. All of these things help drive down on, and none of them are a silver bullet. And so many, I say this all, there is no substitute for diet and nutrition and working out. Weight training, cardiovascular, obviously, that gym memberships, all these things roll up under this. We've got to get proactive.
I don't think that food stamps should pay for Coca-Cola, but if food stamps pay for Coca-Cola, HSAs should pay for unprocessed meat and fruit and vegetables. You should be able to spend spend pre-tax dollars on steak and hamburger. It's a one ingredient food, right?
Yeah.
You should be able to spend pre-tax dollars on single ingredient foods.
And in a way, you're subsidizing the farming industry and the agriculture industry, which is subsidized in so many ways because it's hard to make a living as a real, true farm to table, like grass-fed, organic farm. It's tough to compete against these conglomerates that are, feeding feed and doing all the shady stuff that food industry does.
But imagine if people in food deserts anywhere could spend pre-tax dollars on an orange or an apple, or I don't even care, conventional beef. Just get conventional beef. Single ingredient foods should be pre-tax monies out of an HSA. That is a health savings account. If you are buying single ingredient foods, there is almost no way that you could become unhealthy, Yeah. And look, lineage meat sticks have multiple ingredients, but every single ingredient in here, your grandmother would recognize.
Yes.
I'm not saying like we only have to eat single ingredient foods, but
if you ever look at like a bag of Sour Patch Kids, I was at the movies and I picked up a bag of Sour and I was like, I don't recognize anything other than sugar.
Yeah, it's
I'm
horrible.
like, what is this?
These are all these ingredients that went through the GRAS standards at the FDA that we don't even understand. Natural flavors. It could be anything.
Yeah.
But I think that there's ways to structure this. So if listeners could put aside $4,000 or $5,000 a year into HSA, get a catastrophic insurance plan, then you can go to somewhere like Ways to Well, and you can get a comprehensive plan, or any cash pay clinic. I mean, you don't even need a doctor today to get blood work. You can go online.
Yeah.
You can go online. I mean, I do this in the States. I can just go online and order my own blood work.
My vision for Ways to Well and what we're doing is we are incorporating large language models, and we have an AI called Alan.
He's cool. You showed him to me.
The little alien.
I love it.
And so the vision is you come in, you do a DEXA, you do a VO2 max, you do your blood work. The AI is going to calculate your risk of all-cause mortality. It's going to prioritize the 3 biggest chronic diseases that you're headed towards that could potentially be a risk factor. It's going to quantify your risk factor of developing those chronic diseases. If you give us your genetic makeup, we can go even deeper. And we can almost to the T begin to project out if you're going to develop a chronic disease. And we can get proactive and predictive. And let's go back to diet, lifestyle, nutrition. Like I was saying earlier, Alan could tell us Paul Saladino has 145 pounds of lean muscle mass. He has this family history, has this bone mineral density. We need to make sure we include these food sources, these nutrients, all of it by a large language model. You don't have to get on the phone and pay a nutritionist because the large language model can give you meal plans, all of it. And the next step for me would be, do you begin to just like Amazon, allow custom meal plans to be calculated by the AI large language model? It then gives those patients options of their food plans, and we drop ship farm to table, fresh foods, healthy foods, single ingredient foods that meet your unique makeup that are perfectly designed to you. That's health. That's healthcare.
That's healthcare.
That's proactive, predictive, and preventative.
Yeah.
That's what system we need to build together.
And the thing about this, Brigham, is that that's less profitable for big insurance companies. There's a problem here. That the powers that be don't want that to happen because a sick patient is a profitable patient and a healthy patient, not so profitable.
When we were in that meeting before we testified in front of Senate, one of the senators did say, he goes, just don't pick on Lucky Charms. I love my Lucky Charms. What? And we're like, and he was saying tongue in cheek, I kind of got in a little bit of a debate. He said something to the nature of, people just want a pill. They just want an easy button. And I said, I don't think that's true. After being in healthcare 20 years, I think people want answers. People are desperate. They're confused. One study comes out, then you got a nutritionist telling them it's okay and reaffirming that it's okay to be eating this trash and telling them calories in, calories out. Like, I'm sorry, if I ate 1,500 calories of nothing but Sour Patch Kids, you can't tell me that that's the equivalent to eating 1,500 calories of steak.
No.
It's not the same. There's no nutritional value. And it makes it very easy when we give people these sugar-loaded processed foods to up their caloric intake because they're getting no nutritional value, so they're hungry again. And then they're getting that dopamine spike. And then that dopamine spike is a reward system. And it strips all of our safety nets. Our biomarkers are being corrupted, and we could fix that. All of this is fixable if we changed healthcare to being about metabolic health. If we incentivized every insurance company, every governmental payer to drive metabolic health. Your job is to prevent chronic disease. We're done treating chronic disease. We know we have to keep treating it, but it's not sustainable. We have to implement a plan to drive metabolic health, to drive better life choices, tax incentives, rebates, all the things you and I have talked about. But if we did that, we could head off the 5 killers of humanity that we're headed towards.
Unquestionably. So I tweeted about this, and I want to talk to Bobby about this. I want to talk to RFK Jr. about this when we're in DC. I love that you said metabolic health needs to be the tip of the spear. That should be the central point of everything we do in Western medicine around chronic disease. Because as Kelly and Casey have so eloquently said and brought to the forefront again, like that is really ground zero. That is step one. Like if you just focus on a patient's metabolic health, you're going to get everything else is going to fall into line. But most doctors won't even do a single test that looks at metabolic health. So I tweeted, and I would love for the federal government to subsidize fasting insulin. Talk about, because I heard
you told me this.
I heard you on Rogan talking about this, and it's something that's interesting. As a doctor, if I order blood tests and the insurance company doesn't want me to order those blood tests, they can come back to me and say, hey, why are you ordering a fasting insulin? We're not going to pay for that. And in fact, we're not going to cover, we're not going to reimburse you for seeing these patients. Like, as we talked about earlier in the podcast, these insurance companies are really dictating. They are tying our hands behind our back as physicians and saying, if you don't do medicine the way we want you to do it, essentially, we're not going to reimburse you.
Yeah.
And unless you're on a cash pay model as a physician, that's death.
I'm actually very glad you brought that up because before I started Ways to Well in my pharmacy Revive, I owned blood labs, and I would go out and I would educate primary care clinicians throughout the country on the importance of getting proactive and predictive. And I would explain to them, you can't treat what you can't see, right? And we can't cure what we don't know is there. And the only way to uncover what's really happening with the patient is to do the deep dive. And I would educate them. And these clinicians would go, this makes total sense. I want to implement these comprehensive blood panels into my practice. And then within a month, they'll get a letter from the insurance company. Why are you pulling comprehensive blood work? We don't think you have clinical necessity. We don't think you should be doing this. And they'll send them warning letters threatening to kick them off of that contract.
This is crazy.
And so the doctors would call me and say, hey, I'm sorry, man, I'm done. I'm not pulling blood work anymore. I got a threatening letter from Blue Cross, or I got a threatening letter from Aetna.
Oh my God.
You just crippled their ability to help drive health span, to help prevent chronic disease. Again, why? Why? And we could do it layer by layer. Toxicology, the opioid crisis. Why would you not prescribe so step one, the insurance company could have offered the patient a non-abusive, non-addictive topical pain cream for a lot of these orthopedic related injuries. They didn't, because it costs more and there's no rebate because it's a compounded product. So they pushed the patients to opioids. Roughly 30% of the opioid profits went to the insurance companies. Mm-hmm. So the insurance companies made billions off of this opioid crisis. Then you go, okay, well, if you're going to force these people to opioids, we should probably implement a pharmacogenetic test to identify, is this patient at risk of being a slow metabolizer and dying? Are they at risk of being a fast metabolizer and not experiencing the benefits of the drug? Or are they a non-metabolizer, which roughly 20 to 25% of people are non-metabolizers of opioids. The Samoan and the Hawaiian people can't even metabolize opioids. But how many billions of dollars of opioids were charged to Hawaii? It was all a fraud. They knew all along. Like the Sackler family knew that these pain meds wouldn't work for that class of people. And there's actually a lawsuit by the state of Hawaii against them for this.
This is crazy.
And so as we peel back the layers, they let these drugs get into the marketplace. They incentivize these drugs to be preferred on a formulary. They push the patient to the drugs. Then they strip our ability to uncover if you're even going to be able to metabolize or utilize this drug because they quit covering the pharmacogenetic test. So then our only option left is, how do we stop divergence? How do we know this patient's actually taking this medication or that they're not just abusing it or selling it on the black market? It's a toxicology screen. The federal government says, if you're going to prescribe an opioid for more than 30 days, we want you to do a toxicology screen. Well, guess what? The insurance company said, we're not going to cover it. So then they get rid of the doctor's ability to even confirm that you're not abusing this thing. And so throughout the system, the checks, the balances, all of it was corrupted. All of it was taken out from the clinicians. And then all the meanwhile, the insurance companies were printing buku dollars off of this opioid crisis, which is still perpetuated to this day. The equivalent to a 747 jet worth of people are dying every day of opioid-related deaths. Heroin, black market, everyone's fentanyl. I mean, that's what got my brother. He was addicted to opioids. He attempted to, when they changed the rules and he couldn't get them anymore, he, like so many people, turned to alternatives in the black market, and it was cut with fentanyl, and it stopped his heart instantly the first time he tried it. And that's the story of so many Americans. Oh my God. And what's sad is it wasn't just the Sackler family.
Right.
It was the FDA. It was the Sacklers. It was the insurance companies. It was everyone throughout that chain of command that was supposed to be protecting us, and nobody did. So don't fucking tell me that they're looking out for us on food. Don't tell me this bullshit, because I ain't buying it. I know what you've done. I know what blood's on your hands. We know. If we dig, if we look, we're going to find more and more damning stuff. And I think Bobby's going to dig. I think we're going to find a lot when we drain this swamp.
How much stock in BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard does the Sackler family own, bro?
I know.
I mean, they're not the only ones, but who the fuck knows? But yeah. Okay, so I just want to make sure I emphasize this point. That's wild. I feel like a way to fix this would be like, fasting insulin is $30. What if the federal government subsidized that? The insurance company can't tell you no. A single blood test would zero in. It's not perfect, but it's damn sensitive and specific. And we would be able to tell overnight that we have this huge epidemic of metabolic dysfunction in this country. The reference range for fasting insulin is like, it goes up to 22 or 26 micro IU per ml. That's wild, dude. Yeah. Everyone, you and I bet. Do you know you're fasting insulin?
At the moment? No.
Yeah. No. Every time I check mine, it's 3. It's 3,
wow.
So like everyone I know that's healthy is less than 5. The fact that the healthy range goes to 22 and your doctor won't flag that until you're at 22 is nuts, man.
Yeah.
This is, in my mind, as a doctor's perspective in Western medicine, this is one of our biggest blind spots. I had a friend, and I'm looking at his gut, and I can tell that he has visceral fat, like you said, on a DEXA scan. If he goes in a DEXA scan, I know they're going to see visceral fat. Yeah. I said, get a fasting insulin. And he's otherwise kind of skinny. I think he might actually have
think about this. How many people even ever get a fasting? You know what I'm talking about? When I talk to most people, they just get their blood work when they're at the doctor's office.
CBC,
I forgot.
Chem 7,
I ate, I drank, I whatever.
CBC, Chem 7.
It's crazy.
They never, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so he's...
I know mine. I just don't remember it. I don't know. That's
he's
what I was
skinny,
saying.
and then he has like this kind of thick gut. And I'm like, you need a fasting insulin. 14. And I think he actually has a genetic condition called like a familial lipodystrophy that's causing his visceral fat. But it's like no doctor has ever told him this. His triglycerides are high. He eats well. His triglycerides are high. His HDL is low. He has metabolic dyslipidemia. He has a fasting insulin of 14. And I'm serving with him going, man, you got something wrong here. Like somebody needs to treat this. And it's not his diet. He might have a genetic thing, which is going to be harder to treat, but no doctor's ever thought about for him. And if a doctor did do a fasting insulin, they wouldn't even flag it. They'd say, you're in the middle of the range. Your fasting insulin is 14.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
True story. So I was seeing a nutritionist because I was at 25% body fat. I was on the cut. My dad's diabetic. My mom's diabetic. My brother's diabetic. Everyone in my family is chronically ill. the typical American family. Right. I was a device rep. This was at this point, man, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. I was a device rep. I'm getting up at 4 a.m. to go train CrossFit. I'm doing my best to eat healthy-ish, in my opinion. And I was just gaining weight. And I was on the cusp of obesity. I was 25% body fat. I went to a nutritionist and I started following everything he was saying, doing all the right things. And he got me down to like 22. And he's like, man, something's just not right. And it wasn't until we did comprehensive blood work, fasted with a endocrinologist and urologist, Dr. Larry Lipschultz, a phenomenal, like world-renowned urologist in Houston, Texas, that we uncovered that I had like literally the testosterone level of a 12-year-old girl. Like my testosterone was 110. And it because the food, the processed food, the microplastics, the lack of sleep, getting up, all the things in our environment, I don't know. But just knowing that to me was a trade win that changed my life, because I said, oh my God,
it's correctable.
I can fix this.
Right.
There's hope. And just through fixing that at the time, within 6 months, I went from 22 to 9% body fat. Like where you could see my abs. I felt better. I had energy. I was still eating what the nutritionist told me. But what came first, the chicken or the egg? You know, did I have low testosterone and bad hormones because I was eating bad processed foods and diet, and it created such damage and wrecked my system so bad that even when I was eating clean, it was going to take time for my body to restabilize? We cleaned all that up, and it changed my life. And that was 15 years ago.
You did TRT.
At the time, I did HCG to boost my natural testosterone. And then we just kept reassessing, and we kept making sure that we're driving my testosterone into physiological normal ranges.
I think it's totally reasonable.
And it changed my life. And there's so many people like that. Like women, most women rely on their OB to be their primary care. And a lot of OBs really aren't that nuanced in that piece of driving health span.
Just want to pause the podcast one more time to tell you about this other company that I built, Lineage Provisions. Big food is out there just trying to get us to eat garbage all the time. Convenience is important. So I wanted to build a company that made grass-fed, grass-finished meat snacks conveniently. I'm super proud of our air-dried steak and our meat sticks, both of which are grass-fed, grass-finished beef. This one is just organic apple cider vinegar and sea salt. That's it. Our meat sticks have organs in them as well. The ingredients are simple. Your great grandmother would recognize them. And I'm super proud of what we built here. This is the highest quality snack you could ever get on the planet. I eat it. That's why I wanted to make this company. Eat like a human, guys. Check us out, lineageprovisions.com. Back to the podcast with Brigham. There is so much hormonal dysfunction for both men and women. I mean, this is an epidemic, testosterone connected with erectile dysfunction, connected with infertility in men, PCOS. Every woman I know thinks her hormones are imbalanced. And a lot of them probably are for all the reasons.
Right now, 30 million men in America, are, it's insane.
Have erectile dysfunction.
Yeah. It's like, and it's a telltale sign that, there's something wrong. Our fertility rates are on the cusp of infertile. We are literally, as a species, infertile.
We're about to go extinct.
Yes, it's insane. Men and women are struggling with fertility, and men's sperm counts are at all-time lows. Men's testosterone levels are a fraction of what they were in the 70s. Our grandfathers could run, miles around, like run circles around us and recover. And it's like, there is something, you don't have to have a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial to say something's not right. And my buddy Jason, who testified in front of the Senate, one of his statements was if we spray chemicals and pesticides that are endocrine disruptors and wipe out entire ecosystems and cause infertility in insects and frogs and amphibians and wipe out an entire ecosystem of a pond or a geographic region, we don't think that that's not going to somehow impact our endocrine systems. Like, it's biology. We share common DNA with all of these other species. It's going to impact us. There's no such thing as a free lunch.
But atrazine is in our foods. This is the pesticide you're talking about that turns frogs gay.
Yeah, that's what Alex says.
I met him on it recently, which is amazing. I walked outside and I was like, hey, what's up? He's like, Alex Jones.
Yeah. And there's truth to it. We're finding out there is truth to that. And then you look at who owns those chemicals, who lobbied for those chemicals. It's Monsanto. We know those chemicals in Roundup and all of these chemicals are correlated to cancer rates. Who owns most of the cancer drug? Monsanto. It's like Bayer and Monsanto are intertwined. They're one and the same. And so Bayer has a sordid history with,
oh my God.
Like if we go down that rabbit
you need
hole,
to tell
it's
this
terrifying.
story in case people haven't heard it.
Yeah.
I mean, you've told it on, please tell it again.
Yeah. I mean, one of the examples of if you want to know who these people are, right? During World War II, Bayer struck a deal with the Third Reich.
The Third Reich, Nazis.
The Nazis.
Nazi Germany.
To test their up and coming products on Nazi concentration camps. And there are letters back and forth. This is true. You can look all this up. Monsanto sends a letter saying, we kindly request 150 women and children to test these medications on. They send a train full of 150 people. 6 months later, there's a letter from Bayer saying, unfortunately, the trial's moving forward immensely. Unfortunately, our original participants didn't survive phase 1 of the trial. We kindly request another 150 women. They were testing drugs, killing concentration camp individuals, and using these as testing grounds. And then you go, well, that was a long time ago, right? No way. Things have changed. Then you jump to the 80s. In the 80s, they had a hemophilia drug that inadvertently got infected knowingly with HIV. Bayer did.
Yeah. Same company.
They had the choice to destroy batches of this hemophilia drug and not spread HIV, but lose millions of dollars, or ship the drugs anyway. They shipped the drugs to third world countries that didn't have the safety nets like countries like the United States, knowingly infecting thousands of people with HIV. This was at a time when HIV was a death sentence. There wasn't a cure. And then you go deeper and go, well, what about like treatments to help keep people alive during HIV? At the time, that treatment was $10,000 a month. Compounding pharmacies came out and could make the drug for a couple of $100 a month. Like it was actually, I think, $18 a month or something like that.
What?
They started shipping those drugs and products to save lives in countries like Africa where people couldn't afford these drugs. Big Pharma lobbied and sued to shut down, got an injunction, and prevented the accessibility of these cheaper alternative drugs into the marketplace because it undercut their $10,000 a month drug. But nobody could afford the $10,000 a month drug, so people just died. It took, I think, 12 to 18 months of lobbying and fighting for Congress to get involved and give approval to allow these life-saving treatments into the marketplace. And then you go into the 90s and you look at the Prozac, and then you look at Zyprexa, and then you just keep going through the layers of the Vioxx. Like, how many times are we going to let them perpetuate the lie again and again and again and again? It does start to feel like there's a hidden agenda.
It seems
and the agenda
nefarious
is
to me.
not our health.
No,
it's not saving human lives.
It seems very nefarious to me.
Yeah.
It seems very nefarious. Let's talk about something that is positive. Let's talk about hope. I mean, I'm just glad that we could give people some sort of a framework for how to approach healthcare that might be better. You know, HSA, hopefully we can get that expanded. Get basic blood work. Please, guys, get a fasting insulin. Your fasting insulin would be less than 5. Get a DEXA scan. Get a VO2. Do a comprehensive panel. It's the best $600 you'll ever spend.
Yep.
Work with a provider or use large language models to interpret it. You'll get so much out of it. And
then with all those data points, we can drive health span and we can indirectly drive lifespan. And what I like to say is, if we can buy you time, the innovations that are coming are going to be mind-boggling, between large language models, AI, algorithms, solving problems, improving more efficient medications, reducing side effect profiles. The future is bright. You know, one of my chief science officer, Dr. Ian White, he graduated from the Ansari Stem Cell Institute at Harvard, and he's a leading edge scientist on stem cells and stem cell research. And one of the things he explains is, this is really cool, fascinating, fun stuff. We share a common ancestor with the Galapagos tortoise. It lives
wow.
200 years.
Yeah.
We share a common ancestor with the Greenland shark. It doesn't have cancer. It lives over 600 years. We share a common ancestor with the eternal jellyfish. It lives 5,000 plus years and rebirths itself again. So it essentially lives eternally. And I'm not here to say we're going to live eternally. But what Dr. White will say is within the human genome, within our code lies a black box. And if we could hack that black box and find the gene markers that we share with these common ancestors and turn it on, imagine what we could do with our health span and lifespans. But today, you got to use the tools in your tool belt. You got to get proactive and predictive. It's all about driving health span. It's all about driving metabolic health. It's all about making better choices, taking yourself out of the sick care system. And with that, somebody at some point, I've got to believe, is going to come have a breakthrough. And that breakthrough will forever change humanity.
I think, yeah, we're getting little breakthroughs all the time right now.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk about stem cells. Can we talk about stem cells?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I came to Waves to Well and got stem cells.
Yeah.
And it's super interesting for me. And I was hearing you talk about this on other podcasts. So let's talk about them. So what I understand is these are mesenchymal signaling cells.
You got
Maybe
it.
not stem cells,
Yes.
right? And tell me about that. And then tell me about exosomes, because that's really interesting. Like, tell me what an exosome is and what these signaling cells are doing in our body, because this is a really fascinating rabbit hole that I want people to understand. And then maybe we can wrap into a little bit of like why they're getting regulated and all the bullshit there.
I mean, I think exosomes, I think stem cells, I think amniotic tissues, all of them have therapeutic benefits. And it's just a matter of what is the injury, a different tool for a different use, right? But if we look at what people have, and honestly, a lot of those are historically labeled a misnomer by the public. They lump all those in as stem cells, right?
Okay.
And so when we say stem cells, you're right. They're actually signaling cells. And even the individual who discovered them, Dr. Kaplan, in an open letter to the public, apologized for originally calling them stem cells, because stem cells differentiate and they become something in a petri dish. But when we put these cells in your body, they actually never differentiate. And that's important, because the reason they were overregulated originally is they were worried they would migrate, differentiate, and become a cancer cell.
Right.
And now all of a sudden we exasperated cancer in thousands of people. That can't happen because the cells don't differentiate. So what is the mechanism of action? If I were to put these mesenchymal MSCs into your body, these signaling cells, how are they actually helping me? What are they doing? How does it work? These signaling cells will find their way to the site of inflammation and damage. They then signal to your body that there is damage here. When we're a kid and we fall and scrape our knee, we heal really fast. Why? Because we have all the necessary tools, ingredients, and the blueprint to heal. As we age, our blueprint degrades. Our mRNA becomes damaged, our mitochondria becomes damaged, but then also our building blocks, the peptides, the branch chain amino, all of those begin to degrade, and our processing of those become less efficient. When we put MSCs into the body, they find their way to the site of inflammation, and they operate in a form called heterochronic parabiosis.
Okay.
Like when you combine, that's just the fancy term. Like there was a study done where you combine an old mouse with a young mouse.
Right.
What you find is the young mouse gets older and the old mouse gets younger. You see it when a mother's pregnant. A lot of people don't realize this, but a mother's risk of all-cause mortality is at an all-time low during pregnancy. Her risk of cancer, diabetes, all of these different, cancer, all of these various health issues begin to decline because the baby is also keeping her alive. The baby increases her size of her heart by 30% in the third trimester. All of these cellular goodies that are creating life are also helping keep the mother alive to preserve the baby to allow for a healthy birth. So that heterochronic parabiosis occurs when we put these millions and millions of live, young, vibrant MSCs in your body. Healthy birth, healthy mother. They take a pre-planned C-section. They take the leftover afterbirth, and from there they extrapolate out all these cellular goodies.
This is amniotic cord blood, or
it's typically people will call umbilical cord tissue, but it could be all of the afterbirth. All of those have a plethora of goodies:
placenta,
cytokines, exosomes, extracellular vesicles, all of these little building blocks. And so I tell people, think about it. If you're gonna build a building, you need the brick. You need the mortar. You need the stone. You need all of the raw elements to build the building. But you also need the blueprint. When we put these young MSCs in your body, they come with little messenger RNA cells that tell your cells when they show up, you're young again. Then they combine with your cells. This is literally the mechanism of action. Transfer their mitochondria into your tired, more weary cells. And now, for a period of like 4 to 6 weeks, your cells are operating at an increased rate. And all those little MSCs we put in you are out of your system typically in a matter of a couple of days. Now your cells, Paul's cells, are young, healthy, vibrant cells again. They have all the essential building blocks necessary to help heal and recover. And so we can only heal at a certain rate, but as we age, our rate of healing declines. And the beauty of these tissue-driven treatments is they allow your body to temporarily heal like you're young again.
It's pretty wild.
And that's the gist of it. And whether exosomes, cytokines, all of these operate essentially almost in the same mechanism of action and add value in that way.
It's fascinating to me that these mesenchymal signaling cells are going in and they're transferring mitochondria, probably microRNA, which is interesting because microRNA are something that I don't think a lot of people know about. There was recently just a Nobel Prize about this in the last few years. MicroRNA are not mRNA, right? mRNA is the building blocks of the protein. Yeah. But microRNA are like, as I understand it, these blueprints for our cells, and they control our genetics. Like they're controlling genes being turned on and off. So microRNA, the transfer of mitochondria, healthy mitochondria into our cells, that's fascinating. And then it makes me think, how did our mitochondria get broken in the first place? And I've talked about that on previous podcasts. Probably an accumulated lifetime of seed oils, which we know stay in the mitochondria. This is why I won't go too far down the rabbit hole. But it's one of the reasons I think seed oils are so harmful for humans is because the polyunsaturated fats there accumulate in our cell membranes and they accumulate in our mitochondria. So when I hear about this heterochronic parabiosis and I hear about people transferring blood between young people and old people, the idea is I probably like this. It's just this.
It's like the mice, same thing with
you're getting new mitochondria. And I wonder, my hypothesis might be, are you getting mitochondria that are not poisoned by all this lifetime of seed oils? Are you getting mitochondrial membranes that have less of these polyunsaturated fats? Are you getting microRNA that are not damaged, that are telling your cells what to do?
What's wild and what's scary is you do think about it like, we're learning more and more at the cellular level, like all of these things have memories, right? There's data and memory stored at the cellular level in the DNA, transferred down from generation to generation.
Epigenetics.
And there's and I think it was you or I heard somebody on your podcast or you, I thought that said epigenetics are the gun, diet, lifestyle, nutrition are the bullets, and your choices are what pulls the trigger. Yeah, it's like the idea is basically that you are not your genetics, you are not your epigenetics. As a doctor, you're the culmination of both. Yeah, you are the overlay of the genetic tapestry and the environmental, experience that you have that manifests that. As a doctor, we are sort of hypnotized, we're propagandized, we're basically brainwashed to believe that when you get high blood pressure, Brigham, it's because you have bad genetics. And your family had bad genetics, right? Yeah. You have diabetes and obesity. It's okay, Brigham, I have drugs for you. It's not your fault. It couldn't possibly be all of this pharmacy, FDA, big food collusion that we've been talking about. You just have bad genetics, man. I'm sorry. Like heart disease is it's not escapable. Crohn's disease also, you can't escape these. These are genetic diseases, man. Eczema, psoriasis, this is just bad genetics. You can't fix this. So here's a drug for you. And this is what makes me so pissed off because I've seen it all. Because the other thing that people don't realize is, your genetics are hereditary, but so a lot of times are your behaviors, right? Your family, your lifestyle, your upbringing impacts your choices, and it's easy to fall into those addictive behaviors. True. Because these are chronically addictive foods. And so when all these processed foods and chronically addictive foods, you grow up eating Lucky Charms in front of Saturday morning cartoons. I did. I'd load up a bowl of Lucky Charms and watch cartoons on a Saturday. And that's the world we live in. It's hard to change those behaviors as you age. There's a nostalgia to it. Yeah. But I guess the important message is you are not your genetics, Yep. So much of this is reversible when we actually change who we are at a cellular, subcellular, mitochondrial level. And you can do that with all of these things we're talking about, whether it's stem cells or just basic nutrition. But I have to tell you this before we go, because I know you have to wrap up. When I hear you talking about stem cells, it makes me think about organs. And this is why I'm so excited about this and what we've built here. Yeah, because I'm excited for you to share this because you were telling me this in the living room the other day. Yeah, so
when we look at organs, the benefit of eating organs like this is probably the microRNAs. That certain organ tissues have organ-specific microRNAs. And this is documented with research mostly from Germany, but we've found this research at Heart and Soil, and it's really cool to kind of dig it up and translate it. But you can take liver and put it on a chick embryo, like actual liver, and the chick's embryo the embryonic liver will grow bigger, So like actual organs exposed to embryos will affect the corresponding organ. We've seen this in other animal models. You give animals thymus, and their thymus grows in like mice and rats. That's crazy that like you can give an organ and the corresponding organ grows. And that's not the nutrients in an organ necessarily. Liver is super nutrient rich, vitamin A, folate, biotin, choline, whatever. It's not that the benefit of liver is probably far beyond the nutrients in the liver. It's probably these microRNAs akin to potentially stem cells. The research here is in its infancy, and we want to do a bunch more research at Heart and Soil. But I just thought that was interesting, and I just want to put that out there so I just think about that. Like maybe that's the benefit of taking something like, and the cool thing about freeze drying is it preserves those microRNAs. When you cook liver, it destroys the microRNAs. You either have to eat it raw or you have to freeze dry it. So maybe that's what's going on, because I don't know. Like when people eat freeze-dried testicle, their testicles seem to work better. I don't have a randomized controlled trial, but I have a lot of freaking like anecdotes. Yeah. And that's wild. Is it microRNAs in the freeze-dried testicle or the freeze-dried ovary for women that go and they give blueprints like stem cells would to the corresponding organ? That's wild to think about, but it makes so much sense.
I think as the future, as things evolve and science evolves and our research evolves and we take back the corporate capture of these institutions and we take back our sovereignty and we begin to really do real research focused on driving metabolic health, the future's bright. It's bright. The technology and advancements that we're going to have in the decades to come, whether biologics, whether large language models and AI, whether innovation in pharmaceuticals and custom compounded peptides, I'm bullish. I'm very optimistic, as Callie says, that we could potentially head towards a golden age of healthcare in America.
Let's hope so.
But we have to start by asking the questions, by doing the deep dives, and by fighting back.
Thanks for doing the work you do, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it's been great.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for doing Ways to Well and building these cash pay models that give people another alternative. And thanks for sharing this information, because I mean, you talking to senators, you talking to politicians, you're making a huge impact, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you. We're trying.
Thank you.
Appreciate
brother.
you, man.
Yeah. Thank you.